Hello, welcome to today's tutorial. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to create my Heart of Unity. Obviously we all know what's going on in the world at the moment, and I just thought it'd be a nice little free tutorial for anybody that would like to use them as window decor or wall decor, or even use them to make money to raise vital funds. It's a really simple pattern. I've made it as a stuffed version, a stuffed heart and a stuffed sunflower, but you can, if you wanted to speed things up, just make them as single layers. In order for them to hang nicely, because the heart will be quite flimsy as a single layer, you'd need to use like a 50-50 PVA water mix just to help stiffen them, sort of starch it if you like. Okay, I think that's everything we've done with that one. So to make this pattern you're going to need some polyfill stuffing if you are going to stuff, some scissors, a needle for sewing, and I'm using a 4mm crochet hook, as well as some ordinary double knit weight yarn. So let's get started. We're going to begin with the heart. Now for this heart you need to make two of the same shape, because as I said, this is a stuffed version. So basically you make front and a back and then you sew them together. To begin, you create a slip knot, and then we make a chain of 2. So start with your slip knot, and we're going to chain 2 and 2. And then starting in the second chain from the hook, so not the first one, the second one, we're going to work 2 single crochets. And this is US terminology, so for UK it would be double crochets. So that's 2. Then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work. So now we've got 2 single crochets. We've got a count of 2 for that row. Then we're going to start by working a single crochet into that first stitch there, followed by 2 single crochets into the final stitch, or an increase if you like. So we're always going to be adding 1 stitch per row. So now we've got our 3, we're going to chain 1, turn our work again, and then start the process again. So 1 single crochet into the first, 1 single crochet into the second, and then when we get to the final stitch of the round we are going to work an increase, and you're going to continue this all the way up. So we're creating a triangular shape. You're going to continue the same process, so working a single crochet into each stitch until you reach the final one of the round, and then you're going to work an increase into that final stitch, chain 1 and turn your work to start the next. Now you're going to continue doing this until you reach the end of row 24. So you're going to continue and work row 24. If you get confused about what row you're on, it's very simple to figure out. Basically, the row that you're on is your stitch count plus 1. So there we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 stitches. So that means we're on row 5. Okay, so by the time you get to the end of row 24 you should have 25 stitches along the top there. Okay, and I'll meet you back here once we've got to that bit, and we will start working on the heart peaks. Once you reach the end of row 24 you should have something that looks like this. So you should have a nice even triangular shape, and you should have 25 stitches along the top there. So at the end of row 24 we're going to work as normal. So you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work again. Now we're going to start work on the peaks of the hearts. So for this row we're going to work just 12 single crochet along. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So that's our 12 single crochet. Then as always at the end of the row we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now for this, to shape the heart peaks, what we are going to be doing at the beginning of each row is we're going to skip this first stitch here. So we're not going to work into the first stitch space. So we're going to skip that and work a single crochet into each of the remaining stitches. So we're only going to be left with 11 single crochets at the end of this row. All the way to the end. And again, in the final stitch, make a chain of 1 and turn our work. So now we are working on row 27. So again, we are now going to skip this first stitch space, work into the second, and we are going to be completing 10 single crochets on this row. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 and 10. Again, chain 1, turn our work, skip the first stitch space and work 9 single crochet. Chain 1 and turn to finish that row, and then this is the final row of this sequence. So we're going to skip this first stitch again and then work 8 single crochet into this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Okay, so now you should have something that looks like this. Now it may look a bit blocky, but don't worry about that. We will come to that a little bit later on, and I'll show you how to shape it all nicely. So that was the end of round 29. So for row 30, we are going to chain 1 and turn our work as usual. We are going to continue skipping this first stitch space, and for this row we are going to work 6 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then into the final stitch of this row we are going to work a slip stitch. So find that last stitch, slip stitch in, make a chain of 1 and turn our work. Okay, so that was round 30. For row 11, we're going to again skip this first stitch space. Remember, it's a bit difficult, this one, because it's a bit of a tighter stitch because that was a slip stitch on our last row. We're going to skip over that one. Then we're going to work into this next stitch space here. We're going to begin with a half double crochet, followed by a double crochet into the next stitch. Well, that's a treble crochet if you're working in UK terms, and a double crochet into the next, and then a half double crochet, and finished off with a slip stitch into that final stitch space there. So that final row consisted of skipping over that slip stitch space, working a half double crochet, then a double crochet, a double crochet, a half double crochet, followed by a final slip stitch in the end to finish off there. And as you can see, it sort of rounds off that peak of the heart. So that's the first one done. To make our way down to begin the second peak, rather than trimming off our yarn and starting a new tail where we have to weave in our ends, what we're going to do is just single crochet down the sides of our rows here. So just try and do it as evenly as possible. So you're not inserting too many stitches, but not too few either that you're pulling on the tension of the work. So just wherever naturally that you see that there's a stitch space to work into. And then once we get down to this first stitch space here that the first single crochet was worked into, from row 25, so the final stitch of row 25, we're in the same stitch space here, we are going to work another single crochet. Okay, and now we're going to work along these unworked stitches of row 25. So into this first unworked stitch, we're going to make a slip stitch, sorry. And then we're going to follow that with 12 single crochets into the remaining stitches. So 1 single crochet into each stitch along. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11 and 12, and then essentially we're going to mirror what we've already done on the other peak. So we're going to make a chain of 1, and we're going to skip the first stitch space here and then work 11 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 and 11. So again, chain 1, turn our work, skip the first stitch space and work 10 single crochets, until we reach the end of the row. Chain 1, turn our work, skip the first stitch and work 9 single crochets, and 9, and then the final row of this sequence, the chain of 1, skip the first stitch and 8 single crochets. So now we're going to start rounding off our second peak. A chain of 1, turn our work, skip that first stitch space there, work 6 half double crochets or half trebles if you're using UK terms, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Finish this row off with a slip stitch into that final stitch space there, chain 1, turn your work. Again, skip this slip stitch space. Remember, it's a bit tighter than the usual spaces because it's a slip stitch. Skip over that one and work a half double crochet into the next stitch, followed by a double into the next one, a double into the next one, and then back to the half double on the following stitch, and finish off with a slip stitch into that final stitch space there. So now you should have your little heart shape. Now, as I said, the edges can be a bit coarse at the moment because of where we've decreased and increased, but that's easily solved. So what you do now, and you do this for both pieces, is you make a chain of 1, and starting in the same stitch space that you've just come from, work a single crochet and continue to work a single crochet along the sides of each row all the way along until you get down to the very tip of your heart. And then once you get there, you need to work 3 single crochets into that same tip space, and this will help keep the point of your heart. If you just worked the one, it would just really round off the bottom of your heart there. So work a single crochet into the side of each row. I'll just do a couple more stitches so then I can show you how it's smoothing everything out. Okay, you can really see that now that shaping is much smoother compared to before. So you continue working a single crochet into the side of each row as evenly as possible all the way along, and then once you get down to the tip here, so you're working along this edge here, along the left edge, once you've worked your single crochet into this space, and then into this space here, you've got your tip there where your slip knot started, your very first chain that you worked into, and into there work 3 single crochets all into that same space there, and that will help keep the point of your heart. Then once you've completed those, just continue as normal into each space along the sides, working your single crochets, continue all the way up the right hand side around the peak, and then once you reach your slip stitch here that we did before, once you reach this slip stitch, make sure that you work another slip stitch into this space as opposed to a single crochet, because it just helps keep the shape more pointed. So work your slip stitch back into the top of that slip stitch there, then your final few single crochets until you meet your chain 1, and then slip stitch into this chain 1 there and fasten off your yarn to complete that. So you want to make 2 of those, and then to complete your heart, what you do is you sandwich both pieces together with the right sides facing outwards. Obviously it's not really a wrong side or a right side, but it depends on what side your tails are hanging from. Excuse me. And then just use a simple running stitch or a whip stitch and sew your 2 pieces together in a sandwich, so you're making a little pocket. And then once you get to the point where you've got about 1 inch of space left before your final few stitches, lightly stuff your heart. You can either stuff it with polyfill toy stuffing, or you could even, if you really wanted to, before you actually started sewing your hearts together, you could cut out a cardboard heart as a stiffener if you don't have any stuffing, and then insert that in between the 2 pieces as well, and that would make a nice solid flat heart. Okay, and then you would just weave in all your ends and fasten off to finish. So that's your heart. Now we're going to make a start on the sunflower. To begin work on the sunflower, we are going to start by making our center piece, our brown flower center. Now for mine, I have created a double layer like I had with the heart, and I have stuffed in between the 2 layers. So I've got a brown side and I've got a green side for the back of my sunflower. Of course, you can use 2 browns and make it a double-sided sunflower, because if you had to put the brown on there, it would look pretty much the same as the front. Or if you prefer, you don't even need to make the 2. You could just make a single layer sunflower with just the single brown and then the petals around the edge. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to go about making this one. To begin, we are going to make a magic ring. If you aren't familiar with how to make a magic ring, because I know a lot of you aren't, if you have a look on my YouTube channel, you'll see that there's a playlist there called Crochet Basics, and within there is a nice slow video tutorial on how to make a magic ring. And to begin, we are going to start by working 6 single crochets into the center of our magic ring. So if you remember, if you're using UK terms, that would be double crochets. So we need to make 6 in total. That's 4, 5, and 6. And then pull your magic ring closed, and that's the end of round 1. Now, I'm not going to be joining in between each round because I personally prefer to work in a single spiral because then you don't get your join line. So to figure out where you are, if you count back your stitches, so go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Especially with the dark brown yarn, it's harder to see your stitches there. Then we're going to work straight into the first stitch of round 1, and we're going to work a single crochet increase. So we're going to be working 2 single crochets into each stitch around. So then by the end of round 2, we will have 12 stitches. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12. So we've got 12. That's the end of round 2. Round 3, we are going to continue again straight into the first stitch of the previous round. We're going to work 1 increase followed by a single crochet into the next stitch, and you're going to repeat that sequence for a total of 6 times. So you then end up with 18 stitches in total at the end of round 3. That's my third. And my final stitch there. And then you should have 18 at the end of round 3. So for round 4, again, basically we're going to be just creating increase rounds all the way until we reach our desired circumference of our sunflower center. So for round 4, we're going to work an increase into that first stitch there, and then we're going to work a single crochet into the next 2 stitches now, and we're going to do that a total of 6 times. So you're working an increase followed by a single crochet and another single crochet. So increase, 2 single crochet, increase, 2 single crochet, until you have a total of 24 stitches. If you lose count, don't worry, just count back through your stitches to find out where you are. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So I need to do one more sequence of the increase followed by 2 single crochet to get my 24. Right, so that is the end of round 4. For round 5, again, start with your increase into the first stitch, and then we're going to follow that by 3 single crochets. So an increase, single crochet, single crochet, single crochet. Okay, increase, 3 single crochets. Again, repeat that for a total of 6 times. So then by the end of round 5, you will have 30 stitches, and I'll meet you back here to begin round 6. At the end of round 5, you should have a total of 30 stitches in your spiral. And for round 6, we're going to work an increase into that first stitch, followed by 4 single crochets. So 1 into the next 4 stitches. Again, we're going to repeat that sequence for a total of 6 times. So that's an increase, followed by 4 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I'll meet you back at the end of this round to continue on to the next. At the end of round 6, you should have a stitch count of 36 stitches. And we are going to work on to round 7. So again, straight into that first stitch there, work 1 increase, followed by 5 single crochets. 1 into the next 5 stitches. Again, we're going to repeat that for a total of 6 times. So then at the end of this round, we will have a total of 42 stitches. So one more time, that's an increase into the first stitch, followed by 1 single crochet into the next 5 stitches. And I'll meet you back here for our final round of our sunflower center. So at the end of round 7, you should have a total stitch count of 42 single crochets. And now we're going to work on our final round of round 8 of our increases. So as you can see, a lot of the time when you increase using the same pattern each round, you end up with a slightly hexagonal shaped circle. So what I do to combat this is actually on the final round, if instead of working the increase into that first stitch there, you work your single crochets first and then your increase, it helps round everything off. So for this final round, instead of working our increase followed by 6 single crochet, we're going to work 6 single crochet first, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then we're going to work our increase into the next stitch there. Okay, so that's 1. So then again, 1 single crochet into the next 6, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then work your increase. And continue doing this all the way until you get to the end. And this time your final stitch will be your increase, okay? Not your last of your 6 single crochet. It'll be your increase that will be the last stitch of this round. And I'll meet you back here once you've completed that, and we will start work on our petals. Once you've come to the end of round 8, you should have a nice large palm-sized disc. If you are planning to stuff your sunflower like I have, you will need to make a second one of these. So for the first one, just fasten off and weave in your ends like you normally would and keep it as a solid disc, and then begin work on your second piece. If you're not stuffing, then you just need to make one of these discs. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start work on our petals. So we're going to join the colour, our petal colour, to our main body. To do this, it's very simple. So you start working a single crochet into the next stitch along. So you begin as usual, inserting your hook, pulling up a loop so that you've got 2 loops on your hook. Now we're not going to complete this single crochet in this original colour. We're now going to change to our petal colour, and we're going to simply hook that new colour through those 2 loops there. And that's the very simplest, easiest way to change colour. Make a chain of 1. This helps to secure the 2 in place, and just pull those 2 tails so that it's nice and taut. To begin our petals, we're going to make a chain of 3. 1, 2 and 3. And we are going to work back into the same stitch space that this chain 3 has come from. We're going to work 1 double crochet into there, followed by a chain of 1, and then we're going to work a treble into that same stitch space. So yarn over once, twice over your loop, over your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops a 3rd time. We are then going to make another chain of 1, and we're going to start working into the next stitch space along here. Into this stitch space, we're going to begin by working a double treble. So we're going to yarn over our hook 3 times. In UK terms, this would be a triple treble, okay? So yarn over 3 times, insert your hook into that stitch space, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, that's your double treble completed. Finish that off with a chain of 1, We're then going to begin working into the next stitch space along, and we're going to work one treble. So we're going to yarn over twice, insert our hook into that next stitch space along, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, and a third time pull through those two. Then we're going to make a chain of one into the same stitch space, work a double crochet because we're working down this other side of our petal now, and we're going to finish with a chain of three, 1, 2, 3, and a slip stitch into that same stitch space there to complete our first petal. And there we have our first, if I just pull my hook out of the way a minute, show you the shaping on that one, and that's your first petal there to begin with. Okay, so it slightly goes up to a slight point and then tapers back off again. So again, for a petal, if you want to write this down, you're going to start with a chain of 3, work a double crochet into that same space, followed by a chain of 1, followed by a treble crochet into that same stitch space there. You're then going to make another chain of 1, followed by a double treble into the next stitch space, and finish that off with another chain of 1. You're then going to work into the next stitch space along, so you're working across 3 in total. The next stitch space along, you're going to work a treble crochet, followed by a chain of 1, a double crochet, and your chain of 3 and a slip stitch into that same stitch space there. Okay, and that is your complete petal. To begin work on your second one, we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch space along, so into this next one here, slip stitch into there, and we're going to repeat that process again. So we're going to make a chain of 3, followed by a double crochet worked into that same stitch space, and then a chain of 1, followed by a treble into that stitch space, so we yarn over our hook twice, another chain of 1, and we're going to move over to the next stitch and work a double treble, so that's 3 times around your hook into the next stitch space along, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then a 4th time yarn over, pull through 2 remaining hook loops. Chain 1, and then move along to the next stitch space, and then again work your treble crochet. So we're doing the opposite of what we did on the first section of our petal, followed by a chain of 1, double crochet, chain 3, and slip stitch into that same stitch space to finish off that petal. Okay, so that's our first 2 petals done. All right, and you're going to repeat that process all the way around. Remember, don't forget to slip stitch into the next stitch space along to begin your next petal. We're going to continue this all the way around until we have a total of 12 petals across our sunflower. I think it's 12, it may be 16, bear with me one second. Oh, it's a total of 16 petals around our sunflower. Okay, so then you'll have a nice full flower like this. I've used a different yarn because I didn't have any of this one left in my stash. But you'll end up with a nice full sunflower, because once you've worked your 16 in, these petals will bunch up a little bit as well, so the space in between the stitches won't be quite so obvious. Okay, once you've completed those 16 stitches, you will finish off as you normally would with a slip stitch to finish off your petals. And then to assemble your sunflower, if you aren't stuffing, you're just keeping it a single layer, then that's it completed. And you just draw up a nice long loop at the end to attach to the bottom center of your heart. and then just tie in a really simple knot and weave in your ends. That's all I did. If you are stuffing, then all you do is simply take your sunflower part and then your other plain disc, and you sandwich the two discs together as you did with the heart. Sew all the way around until you leave yourself a small gap. I'd use the brown yarn as well, so it's concealed, until you leave yourself a nice small gap left, and then lightly stuff before continuing to finish off your sewing. And then that is your Heart of Unity completed. So hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope it was nice and useful for you guys, whether you're just decorating your home or if you're making these to raise some funds to help some of these poor unfortunate people at the moment. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and if you would prefer a written pattern, I am going to draft one up and post that onto my Etsy page when I get a spare 5 minutes. So hopefully you'll have everything you need to get going and raise lots of lovely money. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.